In the dimly lit living room of an old farmhouse in rural Texas, Maria Elena, a 57-year-old woman, found herself in a situation she had never dared to dream of. The crackling fire cast flickering shadows on the walls, and the rich aroma of aged mezcal filled the air. As Carlos's hands found hers, she realized that this secret would bind them together forever, like an old rope tucked away in the attic. How had she, an ordinary mother-in-law, arrived at this moment? How could she look into her daughter's eyes without revealing the fire that burned within her, without shattering the life they had built over the years? Listen closely, and I'll tell you how one night turned my life upside down like an old molkajit filled with simmering heat, she thought. Maria Elena stood by the dusty window of the farmhouse, watching as lightning split the sky. It was as if someone above had thrown a 90s party, complete with strobe lights and booming music. The rain pounded against the tin roof like a drunken mariachi on drums, while the wind howled like their neighbor, Mrs. Rosa, when she didn't get her atoll at the local fiesta. She and Carlos, who was 35, had spent the entire day working together like two laborers on a mission. Maria Elena was busy cleaning shelves filled with jars of mole, pickled chilies, and jams, while she polished old photographs of herself and her late husband dancing to the tunes of a record player at the town square. Carlos, lean and strong, with hands made for wielding a machete or holding a woman close, was fixing the creaky barn door, muttering about how the old nails were sturdier than the modern ones. Maria Elena, with a spark still in her eyes, had a curvy figure reminiscent of the heroines from classic films. She had a knack for making anyone laugh, even on the cloudiest of days. Dressed in a colorful embroidered blouse and a long cotton skirt that swayed gracefully as she moved, she wore braided leather sandals that accentuated her well-kept feet, adorned with bright red nail polish. A red shawl draped over her shoulders, and silver earrings jingled softly, adding a touch of feminine mystery that made her presence feel warm and inviting. They had come alone to prepare the farmhouse for a big family gathering. Her daughter, Ana, Carlos's wife, had stayed in the city with the kids. Someone had to tame those little rascals who ran through the house like a whirlwind, drawing on the walls with markers. The day had been hectic. Maria Elena polished the old molkajit while Carlos wrestled with a leaky faucet in the kitchen, cursing like an experienced plumber. She reminisced about her youth, recalling how she and her friends would sneak away from chemistry class to the river, laughing until they cried, while her first boyfriend nearly capsized the canoe trying to kiss her. Carlos listened to her stories, smiling, and she found herself surprised by how his smile felt like a ray of sunshine on that dreary day. As evening fell, they finally sank into the worn sofa, and nature put on a true spectacle. The lights flickered, winking at them like an old friend, before plunging them into darkness. Silence enveloped the room, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the thunder that rattled the windows, mirroring her own nerves as she approached retirement. Outside, the storm raged, and inside, the house smelled of dampness, old wood, and something comforting, like her mother's tamales. "How's it going, Maria Elena?" Carlos asked, brushing the dust off his jeans and retrieving a bottle of mezcal from the cabinet. "Let's warm up in true country style." She smiled as she watched him skillfully pour the amber liquid into carved glasses, as if he had been doing it his entire life. The fire danced in the hearth, casting reflections on his face. Suddenly, she thought he looked like a hero from one of those movies where the rugged man saves the day. "Here's to a cozy night," he said, raising his glass. "To family," she replied, clinking her glass against his, feeling a flutter of something unspoken between them. As they sipped the mezcal, the warmth spread through her, igniting a spark that she hadn't felt in years. The storm outside raged on, but inside, a different kind of storm was brewing, one that threatened to change everything. The storm outside intensified, the wind howling as if it were a living creature, but inside the cozy living room, Maria Elena and Carlos settled onto the old, worn rug in front of the fireplace. The cushions behind them were dusty, carrying the faint scent of her mother's floral perfume, reminiscent of gardenias blooming in the summer. The mezcal burned pleasantly as it slid down her throat, warming her from the inside. She began to reminisce about her youth, sharing tales of dancing until dawn to the rhythm of cumbia, of convincing a friend to skip physics class to go to the river, and of her first boyfriend who nearly capsized their canoe trying to kiss her. "Wow, Maria Elena, you were quite the danger to men," Carlos teased, pouring her another generous glass of mezcal. His deep, gravelly voice was like music from an old radio, sending shivers down her spine. "Oh, Carlos, don't start," she rolled her eyes dramatically, a smile tugging at her lips. "That was 100 years ago. Now I'm just a grandmother who makes tortillas, knits baby clothes, and scolds everyone." "Not a chance," he replied, leaning in closer, the earthy scent of his cologne filling the air, reminiscent of the desert after rain. "You're still a danger. Look at you, laughing like a schoolgirl," he continued, his gaze lingering on her. "And that figure? Let's just say any young woman would envy it." Her cheeks flushed, igniting memories of village dances, not of the hacienda with her son-in-law. She placed her hand on his firm, warm shoulder, as if he had spent the day lifting weights instead of fixing doors. Carlos held her gaze, his dark eyes reflecting the flickering flames. Her heart raced like an old clock, and she knew she was at a crossroads, either retreat or leap into the unknown. "Maria Elena," he began, but she interrupted him with a whisper. "Shoo, Carlitos, the storm is raging outside, and we're here warming up." He smiled slowly, like a cat that knows its prey won't escape. Then he leaned in and kissed her, confidently, the taste of mezcal and something forbidden lingering between them. Thunder rumbled, shaking the house, but all she could hear was her heartbeat and the warmth of his breath, like the fire crackling beside them. Her fingers brushed against his neck, feeling the tension in his muscles as he pulled her closer, as if afraid she might vanish into the shadows. "This is official now," he murmured, pulling back just enough to catch his breath. "Mother-in-law and son-in-law preparing for a party," he added, laughter trembling in his voice, but his eyes told a different story. "Only if the storm helps," she replied, feeling a fire inside her that burned brighter than the flames in the hearth. They laughed, but their laughter was soon drowned out by another deep, passionate kiss, as intense as a summer night. The rain pounded against the roof like applause, and they melted into the chaos of sounds and shadows. His hands traveled down her back with a gentle insistence that quickened her pulse. She wasn't a young girl anymore, but there was something about this man that made her feel alive and desired, just like when she was 20. "Maria Elena," he whispered, burying his face in her neck. "Are you sure this isn't a dream?" "If it is, let it never end," she exhaled, tangling her fingers in his slightly damp hair. The day had been long, and the night stretched on even further. They sank into the old sofa, the same one that had creaked since the days of her late husband. It came alive beneath them, protesting with each movement. Her nails lightly traced his back, like an artist leaving marks on a canvas, while his hands explored her curves with reverence, as if mapping out a treasure. She felt no shame in her full, mature figure, like a fine wine that improved with age, and he, from the way his fingers trembled, appreciated it fully. In that moment, she noticed how he admired her sandals, brushing against her feet with care, as if the woven leather and her red nails added a special charm to their intimacy, a subtle nod to the traditional footwear that evoked sensual traditions without crossing any lines. The storm raged outside, a wild symphony of rain and thunder, but inside the cozy living room, Maria Elena felt a different kind of storm brewing. The old sofa creaked beneath them, its worn fabric a testament to years of family gatherings and quiet evenings. Careful, this sofa might not hold us, Carlos chuckled, his voice warm and teasing, as the furniture groaned like an old man protesting against their weight. Maria Elena exhaled softly, pulling him closer, a playful challenge in her eyes. I'll show you what a real burden feels like, she replied, laughter bubbling between them, but soon their playful banter faded into a rhythm that matched the tempest outside. The rain pounded against the roof, and the thunder rumbled like an applause for their growing intimacy. Carlos's shirt lay discarded by the fireplace, and Maria Elena's hair was tousled, reminiscent of a girl who had just danced the night away. You're a dangerous woman, Maria Elena, he said, momentarily pulling back to catch his breath, his gaze lingering on her disheveled hair, which made him look ready to sweep her off into a romantic movie. And you, Carlos, are too young to resist me, she winked, and he enveloped her again, like a wave crashing over the shore. The storm outside showed no signs of letting up, but they didn't mind. The fireplace crackled with warmth, the mezcal had dulled their inhibitions, and sparks flew between them, brighter than any lightning. It felt wrong, risky even, but oh, how good it felt. Here she was, a 57-year-old mother-in-law with curves that told stories of life, and he, her son-in-law, with dark eyes that held a depth she had never noticed before. They hadn't crossed any lines, but every glance, every brush of their skin promised more than mere words could convey. As dawn broke, the sun filtered through the clouds, casting a soft glow over the house. Maria Elena stretched, feeling a pleasant heaviness in her body, and glanced over at Carlos, who was busy in the kitchen with the teapot, humming a tune from a classic country song. Yet, every now and then, his eyes would return to her, as if they were still wrapped in the warmth of the fireplace. The storm was the perfect cover, Carlos, she said, pouring herself a cup of tea. No one will ever know. He nodded, hiding a smile behind his cup, and she felt the warmth of his words seep into her chest. This house isn't just for parties anymore, it's our little hideaway, he whispered, and she felt a rush of heat at the intimacy of his confession. But within her, two voices battled for dominance. One, emboldened by the mezcal and the crackling fire, urged her to live fully, to embrace the thrill of life. The other, strict and maternal, reminded her, this is your son-in-law. What will Ana Luisa think? What will people say? She tried to shoo those thoughts away, but they buzzed around her like pesky flies, especially when she looked at Carlos and saw the same fire reflected in his eyes. Returning to the city with her family, they were laden with stories of how they had braved the storm and darkness. Ana Luisa was full of questions, the children bounced around, and Maria Elena caught fleeting glances from Carlos, each one so charged that she had to look away to keep from revealing too much. Why are you smiling so much, Mom? Ana Luisa asked, narrowing her eyes as she chopped salad. Oh. The storm yesterday was something else, Maria Elena shrugged, trying to sound casual, though the warmth of Carlos's presence made her heart race. Carlos nearly choked on his tea, and she turned away, stifling a laugh. What did it matter what others thought? Their storm was theirs alone. The family gathering buzzed with life, reminiscent of a bustling Saturday market. The house came alive with laughter and chatter, the table bending under the weight of tamales, pozole, homemade preserves, and smoky carnitas. The children raced around the garden, their shouts louder than sirens, before tumbling into the grass, covered in dirt and giggles. Maria Elena, in her best floral dress, shone at the table, serving warm atoll and beaming with joy at the family reunion. Across from her sat Carlos, his dark eyes now holding not just mischief but the same fire that had ignited during the stormy night. They both knew this house wasn't just a venue for celebrations, it had become their secret sanctuary. Ana Luisa recounted the children's antics, like how the youngest had drawn on the walls with markers and how the oldest had tried to fix the vacuum cleaner, only to flood the bathroom. Carlos nodded along, but his gaze remained locked on Maria Elena. She would touch his hand as she passed the salad or adjusted the tablecloth, letting her fingers brush against his wrist, each accidental touch sending a thrill through her. The air was thick with unspoken promises, and as the party continued, Maria Elena felt the weight of their shared secret hanging between them, a delicious tension that neither dared to break just yet. Maria Elena stifled a smile behind a mouthful of tamale, her heart racing as she caught a glimpse of Carlos. "Carlos, why so pensive?" Ana Luisa asked, eyeing him with mild suspicion. "Are you thinking about work?" "No," he shook his head, casting a quick glance at Maria Elena that sent a flutter through her. "It's just that this house is so cozy. I feel like I want to check everything to make sure it's all right." He nearly choked on his atoll but managed to cough discreetly into his napkin. "Oh, Ana Luisa, your husband is a master at everything," Maria Elena said with an innocent smile. "Without him, I would have been lost during the storm." Carlos smiled back, and Ana Luisa simply nodded, preoccupied with another tamale. She didn't notice the undercurrents swirling between them. Maria Elena felt a twinge of guilt, knowing that her heart was tethered to Carlos more tightly than a rope on an old canoe. As night fell and the guests departed, the children settled down, and Maria Elena found herself on the porch, gazing up at the stars peeking through the torn clouds. Carlos emerged shortly after, 2 steaming cups of tea in hand. He sat down beside her, and they fell into a comfortable silence, listening to the crickets serenading the night. The silence felt heavy, as if they both understood they had crossed a line. "Maria Elena," he began, looking into his cup. "This isn't just a whim. I'm talking about us." She sighed, feeling her heart tighten. "Carlos, we're like 2 fools who found matches and decided to play with fire. What if the house burns down?" He met her gaze, and his eyes held a mix of desire, doubt, and fear. "What if it doesn't?" he whispered. "If we're just careful, my king." But her laughter was tinged with bitterness. "Careful. It's like dancing on the edge of a roof during a storm. One misstep and it's all over." He took her hand, his fingers warm like they had been on that stormy night. "Then let's dance carefully," he said with that audacity that had captivated her from the start. They lingered in that moment until the tea cooled and the stars shone brighter. She knew this conversation wouldn't resolve anything. The storm brewing inside them was far from over. The next day, they decided to heat the steam room, that old, crooked structure still standing strong like their secret. While Carlos chopped wood, Maria Elena carried water, stealing glances at him. He wielded the machete with the ease of someone born to it, and she couldn't help but admire the way his muscles tensed beneath his worn shirt. "Maria Elena, don't distract me," he winked, noticing her gaze. "Or the machete might fly off the log." "Oh, Carlos, I'm just bringing water," she replied with a playful smile, swaying her hips intentionally, reminiscent of her dancing days at the fair. The steam room warmed up, and they entered to check if everything was ready. The air was thick with the scent of herbs and humidity, wrapping around them like a secret. He closed the door, and in the dim light, amidst the warm air, his hands found hers again. "This isn't a storm anymore, it's a fire," she whispered, but she didn't pull away, feeling his warmth blend with the steam. "Then let's burn together," he responded, and his lips found hers, as hot as the air surrounding them. They shared a subtle fascination with the steam and herbs, evoking sensory rituals from their culture, brushing against her sandals delicately, admiring how the leather absorbed the moisture, adding an intriguing tactile charm. They didn't cross the line, but every moment in that steam room felt like a dance on the edge. When they emerged, flushed and with damp hair, Ana Luisa looked at them with mild surprise. "Why are you two so happy?" "The steam room turned out great." More than great, Carlos replied, shooting Maria Elena a look that weakened her knees. Maria Elena knows how to stoke the fire. She nearly burst into laughter but turned away, adjusting the towel on her head. Then came the encounters in the car. Carlos offered to drive her to town for supplies. Of course, they stopped on a rural road, far from prying eyes. The car rolled to a stop on a quiet country road, the sun dipping low on the horizon, casting a warm glow over the fields. Maria Elena felt a flutter of excitement as Carlos turned to her, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "Maria Elena, are you going to take me to the grave?" he murmured, leaning closer, his breath warm against her neck. "Where do you get this energy at your age?" "I can still hold my own, Carlos," she teased, a playful smile dancing on her lips. "You just hold on tight, young man." The windows fogged up as laughter bubbled between them, the soft strains of Vicente Fernandez playing on the radio, wrapping them in a cocoon of nostalgia. They felt like teenagers again, sneaking away from the world, lost in their own private moment. But back at home, Ana Luisa was beginning to notice the changes. During dinner one evening, she looked up from her bowl of pozole, her brow furrowed in thought. "Carlos, why do you spend so much time at the ranch?" she asked, her voice steady but probing. Maria Elena froze, spoon halfway to her mouth, but Carlos remained unfazed. "There's so much work to do, Ana Luisa," he replied calmly. "The roof, the plumbing, that old mortar and pestle. Do you know how old that house is?" Ana Luisa pressed, her tone laced with skepticism. "Yes," she replied, but doubt lingered in her voice. "Mom, why are you so quiet? Aren't you tired of being over there with him?" Ana Luisa's question hung in the air, and Maria Elena couldn't help but chuckle, trying to lighten the mood. "Ana Luisita, with Carlos, there's never a dull moment. He's like a son, always helping out." She turned to the stove, hiding her smile, but the glances exchanged with Carlos were electric, charged with unspoken words. Their secret meetings continued, slipping away to the barn under the guise of fixing a shelf, or hiding in the attic. Once, they lingered in the pantry, supposedly checking jars of peppers. The air was thick with the scent of dampness and pickles when he pressed her against the cool wall, his warmth contrasting sharply with the stone. "Do you understand what we're doing?" she whispered, her hands finding their way around his neck. "I understand," he replied, his lips brushing against hers. "And I don't want to stop." Another moment came in the garden, pretending to check if the rain had eroded the crops. Beneath the old cactus, where the scent of wet earth mingled with ripe fruit, he took her hand, and they paused, listening to the raindrops fall from the leaves. "I don't know how to stop this, and I don't want to," Maria Elena admitted, her gaze locked onto his. Silence enveloped them, a storm brewing within her, not the one raging outside, but one ignited by his words, his gaze, and his touch. She knew it was wrong, but every time he was near, she felt more alive than ever, not as a mother-in-law or grandmother, but as a woman full of vitality. They joked and laughed, but deep down, they knew they were playing with fire. Ana Luisa hadn't caught on yet, but her questions kept them on edge. One day, while they were in the kitchen, Ana Luisa suddenly remarked, "Mom, you're different. You're glowing like a young girl. Is it the ranch that's affecting you?" Maria Elena froze, but she laughed to mask her nervousness. "The ranch, Ana Luisita, the fresh air. And you, Carlos, you're a master at everything. Without you, I'd be bored." Ana Luisa looked between them, but said nothing, merely nodding before heading off to tuck the kids in. As Carlos and Maria Elena exchanged glances, they both felt the weight of the unasked question: how long could they keep this secret? Yet, every time they found themselves alone, the storm returned. Not the one howling outside, but the one that lived within them. The house, steeped in mezcal, rain, old wood, and herbs from the steam room, became their sanctuary, where they could be themselves, if only for a moment. She knew this secret, like an old mortar and pestle, would hold the warmth of their encounters, even when the festivities ended. But deep down, fear gnawed at her. What if one day Ana Luisa noticed the sparks in their eyes? What if this storm that brought them together turned into a hurricane that destroyed everything? Still, looking at Carlos, at his smile, at his hands, she couldn't stop herself. It felt wrong, it felt risky, but in this fire, she felt alive. Just when they thought they could control it, her phone buzzed with a message, an anonymous photo of them in the garden, taken from afar. Who saw us? How could they move forward now without the secret exploding and tearing their family apart? Subscribe to the channel,